Hey, these people have some great ideas on teaching me. Don't go away. They're about to start.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robin Allen. I'm a trainer with Get More Math in Texas. I'm also a former math classroom teacher. Taught for 29 years a variety of grade levels from primary through elementary and middle school. Became district math specialist and did that for a number of years. I know that common struggle as math teachers that we're all dealing with. How do we get our students to remember the content we've taught them? How do we make it stick? We're desperately looking for that long-term retention. Welcome to your Get More Math session. Are you missing the power? Let's jump right in and take a look. A typical day in a math classroom includes the teacher teaching that lesson. We introduce the new content. We connect it to prior learning. We might do some hands-on manipulative, some note-taking, and then we gradually release our students to practice the skill we just taught them. Now, if you take that day and you put day after day together, it forms a cohesive unit. And at the end of this unit, what do we normally do? A test. And how do we get ready for that test? I always did a review. In fact, my reviews would look very similar to my actual test. I would change the names and the numbers within the word problems, but it was pretty close to the test. The next day, the students came to class. We took the test. As soon as that test was over, I was scouring those tests, analyzing them, figuring out the skills they did well in and the skills they were struggling in, trying to figure out what we needed to cover because I wanted to fill in those gaps. And the day after that test, we went right back over that test. I wanted to make sure we were learning from our mistakes before we moved forward. And then after Unit 1, we moved right on to Unit 2 and Unit 3, and there was no time to slow down. I had an entire curriculum I needed to cover by the end of the year. Now, at the end of the year, what comes? That big old test is waiting for us. It's cumulative. And how do we get ready? Of course, a review. Now, we all know that this simply doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. The kids aren't remembering. So let's have a reality check. Let's take a look at what's really going on. What is the student objective here when we're doing that review? It's cramming. They're cramming it all in. They want to be successful on that test. Their objective? Pass that test. The teacher objective? We want them to understand the math, make those connections, keep that skill current. So after the test, when I'm going over it, wanting to make sure they understand their mistakes, they're simply flushing it right out of their brain. You can see it. Whew, don't have to see that again. Made it through that. So it's really more of a cram and flush. Not my intention, but that's more what's really happening. So now let's take a look through the school year using that cram and flush model. You teach, practice, cram, and flush Unit 1, move right on to Unit 2. Following the same pattern, teach, practice, cram, and flush, and you continue to move through the school year, unit by unit in isolation. Notice what's beginning to happen to those units as you move through the year. I would venture to say that the majority of the whole first semester has disappeared, and all of that within the second semester is starting to get fuzzy, hazy, and some of that is even completely gone. And so then, of course, what happens at the end of the year? Still that same big test, and to get ready, I didn't just do a few days of review. I did up to 3 weeks review. I was virtually trying to teach all of the key concepts I possibly could right before that test. Why? I wanted my students to do well. I wanted them to be successful. Now, what do we need to do? Josh Britton figured out that we really needed to add a third component to our day. We're going to adjust those minutes to include a third piece, that mixed review. How powerful that every day Certainly, you're still going to teach that lesson. Of course, your students are going to have to practice the new skill you just taught them, but they are also going to have time to practice all of the previously learned content. So where is the power? As valuable as it is to practice new content, that only brings on short-term retention. The students know it today. They might very well remember it tomorrow, but fast forward a month, 6 or 8 weeks, it's gone. So where is that power? It's actually in the mixed review component. It is going to be cumulative, only based on the skills you've taught already throughout the year, totally individualized for every single student, and this will bring retention over time, accuracy over time, that long-term retention that we're craving so much for our students. Now let's jump in and take a look at a practice set and a mixed review. Here on your screen, you see a practice set. In the lower right corner, I've given you a visual. We are actually in the second component. The teacher's already taught the lesson. In the upper green ribbon, the title of the assignment is slope. That tells me the students just learned about slope. The teacher has guided them through some practice, and now the students are logged in to practice that content, slope. It's specific on slope. Below the green ribbon are the 3 squares, and each one of those is related to slope. Our objective, we want our students to understand slope. Now let's take a look at a mixed review screen. Notice in the lower right corner, again, I've given you that visual. The students have transitioned into that third component, the mixed review. Remember, this is where the power is held. In the upper green ribbon, it says mixed review, and look below the green ribbon are lots and lots of squares. And remember, each one of these are skills you've already taught your students earlier in the year. Every student has the same number of squares on the screen. However, every student's screen looks somewhat different based on their individual growth and progress per skill. Notice those 3 skills in the lower right corner. Those are today's slope skills. They immediately became part of the mixed review on the very day that you assigned it. Notice some of the skills are actually red. Red being beginning level, little to no mastery at all. Some of the skills are yellow. The students have made a little progress here. Some are green. Some have moved to silver star, and some the gold standard, our highest color rating. Now keep in mind that just because a student achieves that silver or gold standing does not guarantee they will remember it forever. We know in math if they don't use it, they lose it. So with Get More Math, it will continue to bring those skills back up for the students to practice. Also notice some of the skills are prioritized. Those dollar signs are prioritizing the specific skills that each student needs to practice. So the skills one student is prioritized to practice may be completely different than the skills of the other student. Every student will receive effective practice, not just generalized practice. Now, lots of times teachers wonder, how in the world does Get More Math know where to place those dollar signs? If the skill is brand new or the student is still learning that skill, it will pop up more frequently with a dollar sign in order to build mastery on that skill. However, if a student has already achieved mastery, it isn't going to go away. It isn't going to drop off. We know the student still needs to see it, so it will continue to pop up, but only occasionally with a dollar sign, in order to ensure the student is maintaining the mastery on that skill. The number one biggest mistake that we make as teachers, we want this. We want to teach that lesson, connect it to prior learning, build those relationships, grow the math. We want our students to practice and show us they understand the new skill, and we want our students to have the opportunity to spiral back and practice all the previously learned content. but we get really into the lesson and into practicing on only today's skill. And many times we do this, noticing that we're barely getting any time in to practice all of the content that they've learned, or some days not at all. Be aware. Watch the time on your clock. You want to make sure that you are prioritizing that mixed review practice. Caution. Certainly you're going to teach that lesson, and there are going to be days that lesson takes a little more time than other days. You're going to connect it to prior learning, build up that solid foundation, and then your students need to practice. But don't stop there. If all they do is practice today's skill, as valuable as that is, they've missed out on the most powerful piece of Get More Math, and that is that third component, that mixed review. Keep in mind what we're searching for. What are we on the path to achieve? And it's long-term retention. Absolutely our goal. And in fact, the way to get there is efficient and effective time spent in that mixed review. Mixed review is the treasure within the Get More Math program. So I'm going to have you take a look and think about 3 simple shifts from this to this. Shift number 1. Question we typically hear: did my students complete the practice set? Now, as valuable as it is for students to practice the new content, remember, if they don't get to mixed review, they're missing out. So the question should be, did my students earn enough points in mixed review? Remember, that new skill is a part of that mixed review. Shift number 2. I only set and check a practice set goal. How about thinking this? I set a daily, weekly goal that includes mixed review points. And finally, the practice set completion implies skill mastery. Oh my goodness, I wish that were the case, but we know that it is not. How many times have we taught a wonderful lesson? We went home that night and thought, this was an awesome day. All of my students learned it. And then to come back the next day or the next week, and it's completely gone. Let's consider thinking, are my students moving mastery from red and yellow to green or better? Green, silver, or gold. That actually shows mastery over time. 3 simple shifts from this to power. Be sure we're including a daily or weekly goal that includes points in mixed review, as well as monitoring those colors. Are the students moving from red and yellow beginning level to green, silver, and gold? Remember those 3 best practices. You're going to teach that lesson, guide your students through some practice, and start them on a practice set. You're going to set a daily goal that includes points in the practice as well as points in mixed review. And then be sure to include switching your class over to mixed review if they're not getting there in the allotted amount of time. No worries if they didn't complete today's practice set. That skill is included in mixed review and it will be prioritized. They will continue to see it. So where is the power? It's found within the mixed review piece. That's where the long-term retention is. It's the heart of the Get More Math program. Students working in mixed review will bring on that long-term retention and that true understanding that we're going for. It's going to happen by, of course, you teaching that engaging math lesson, guiding your students through practice, and encouraging them to show their work. Checking their work before entering their answers. And as soon as they enter their answers, they're going to receive immediate feedback with smileys and crowns, or possibly the red outline or the pink dot saying that they've missed it and now they need to correct it. Remember, Get More Math is holding students to a higher accountability toward accuracy. Keep in mind, this is going to push your students to ask those critical questions. They won't sit quietly working on a worksheet and practicing incorrectly time and time again. They will reach out, and you'll be there to intervene. Also, those penalties that are available in Get More Math that sometimes pop up, that's to discourage your students from guessing. Get More Math will only assign a penalty to a skill that a student has already shown some mastery on. It is to discourage guessing and encourage students to slow down, work it out on paper, and make sure before entering their answer. And last but certainly not least, you have real-time data on exactly what your students are doing. So be sure you have it pulled up while your students are working. You can monitor on your cell phone from a tablet or Chromebook or laptop. You'll know exactly what your students are working on and how they're doing throughout your class period. And with you doing all of that, your students will reach that long-term retention that you are so desperate for them to have. Thanks so much for coming to this session. Don't miss the power. Thanks.
Hello, Texas teachers. This is Erica Martin, Director of Training here at Get More Math, and I am so excited today to get to talk to you about exams in Get More Math. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, most of you, we're going to call advanced users, you've already been using Get More Math to improve your daily practice. So you've already taken that old paradigm of teaching a lesson and providing practice on only that new material, and you've transformed into providing both the lesson and the focus practice as well as that mixed review, because we all know that's where the power lies. If we're not continually cycling back through old material, our students forget, and what we're trying to build is long-term retention throughout the year. So we've already improved that daily practice. And what I'm here to talk about today is what else could be improved. Now, I know all of you out there are already providing some assessment to your students. I'm guessing most of you are using what you might call a unit test or a chapter test, where you're assessing the new material that you just most recently taught. Now, I'm going to take the very introduction of this portion of our training today, and I'm going to try to have you question whether or not that's really the best way to assess our students. So hear me out just for a second. If we're testing our students by chapters or units, you've got a picture here of an entire year. Each one of these blocks is a different chapter, a different unit. You can see that our days, we've got them signified with Get More Math Mixed Review in there. So remember that blue portion signifies the lesson, the teaching. The purple is the focus practice. And then that green is the quality, cumulative, individualized mixed review. So I'm already so happy to see that you are prioritizing mixed review on a regular basis. But if we do that in our practice, and then on the flip side, we only assess our students on one chapter. And then the next chapter, we continue to practice in review, but we only assess the next chapter. And then we get to Unit 3. And again, we continue to practice Unit 2 and Unit 1, but when it comes time for assessment and we give that test, we're only covering the third unit. So what are our students becoming accustomed to? Well, every time they take an assessment, it's on a limited number of skills. It's on the most recent skills that were taught. And we do this throughout the year so that by the time we get to the end of the year and it's time to take that big test, we ask them to do this. Doesn't seem fair, right? Really, how can we expect our students to consistently take tests that only cover specific chapters or specific units, and then one time a year they have to take this big, massive cumulative test? I don't really think we're preparing our students well. So, what else could be improved here? Already improved our daily practice. What if we considered adjusting our tests to not just include the material from that chapter or unit, but to also include old material? That's a cumulative assessment, right? Now you might ask, well, why don't all math teachers do that with their tests? Why don't they give tests that continually get slightly larger and include slightly more material? Well, the reason is it's really hard to build. Ask any teacher that's tried it. And when you get to Unit 6 and now you have to look back and you have to find good questions from Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 and Chapter 2 and Chapter 1, it's a challenge. Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. Get More Math makes it super simple. So that's the first thing I want you to know. I'm telling you, making a cumulative test is no more difficult than making a regular exam or a regular weekly quiz. And think about how this could improve your students' preparation for that big test. If now when we gave that first test, we covered the material that we think they actually know from that last unit. What if when we gave the second test, we covered the material we actually thought they should know from the first and second unit? What if on the third test, it's getting a little bigger, we included some material from Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3? Now, I'm wondering if you notice that I'm not highlighting the days directly before the test. Let me explain why. When I was in the classroom, and I will tell you that I tested my students by units and chapters, and I first spoke with Josh Britton, he said to me, Erica, I want to know when I give an assessment what my students actually know, not what they crammed the day before, not what they just memorized the night before maybe, so that they could spit it out on the test. I want to know, what do they actually know? And he said the material that I taught 1, 2, 3 days before a test, I don't expect them to know it yet. It's still too new. So he always told me that he would avoid including the very most recent material on any exam he gave. But he said anything before that most recent material was always fair game. And so what happens is when you think about that, what you're actually doing is you're preparing your students throughout the year for the big test, because every test gets a little bit larger, incrementally. So there's no sudden big jump. And if you think about it, when you're already using Get More Math, remember, all of that green is cumulative review. So you're already delivering that message to your student. You're saying, listen, I think it's important that we continue to practice and review all the skills from all year. Well, if we deliver that message through practice, why not deliver that message through assessments? Why not say that any assessment you get could include anything from the entire year? And if you consider this, what happens when you get to the end of the year and they have to take the big test? Folks, it's not that big to your students. It's just the last test of the year. And I can speak from experience. I did this with low-level 10th and 11th grade Algebra 1 students. These were kids that struggled with math their entire life. And when I started to test this way, it made a significant difference in the way they approached that end of the year test. The anxiety dropped considerably because it was what we had done all year. So let's talk about this. We've already got the practice in Get More Math. Now you've got the exams too. We're going to show you how to create them. We're going to show you how we offer this flexible grading. We're going to save you tons of time by grading the exams for you. But what's better is it's not just a yes or no kind of situation. You get to go in and take a look at the questions that they've missed, and you get to decide whether they get full, partial, or no credit. So I really appreciated that as a teacher as well. We're going to offer what we call individualized corrections. So we're going to give your students a chance to correct all the mistakes that they made on the test. I know that was always a struggle with me when I was giving paper tests. We're going to embed it right into their practice and make it simple. We also create what we call individualized follow-ups. These are specific little quizzes made for each student based on the mistakes they made on the test. So they have a chance to retake almost that exam and show you that they've actually grown. They've actually made some progress on the errors that they made on the original test. And then I'm going to go over some of the reports that we offer, both an item analysis and a comparison of the follow-up and the exam. So let's take a look at the exams themselves. How do we create exams and Get More Math? Guess what, folks? It's just as easy as pulling out the skills from the practice sets you've already created, or pulling the skills from the mixed review that you've already created. You've already done the work. Making the exams Super, super simple. What does that grading look like? Well, here's an example. Here's a specific student. This is Timmy. You can see that on this exam, Timmy got a 15 out of 20, so he got a 75%. Here's the time saver. I don't have to waste my time grading all 20 problems. I only have to look at the 5 he missed. So if you think about it, if you have a class of 30 students, 30 questions on a test, that's 900 questions you needed to check before Get More Math. Not anymore. Get More Math is going to narrow it down to only the ones that were incorrect. You will not believe how much time this saves you. So I'm going to take a look at Timmy. I can look at each incorrect answer. It'll show me the problem, his answer, as well as the correct answer. And then if you take a look at the bottom of the screen, I have the option to choose whether I want to give Timmy full credit, partial credit, or no credit. So I really liked that I was still in control here, that I didn't have to accept the grade that was given. Sometimes we want to make some exceptions for our students. Now, let's assume that Timmy missed those 5. What would his corrections look like? You're going to love this. So as soon as Timmy gets into mixed review after he's taken a test, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I want Timmy to practice most? How about the ones you missed on the test? That's what corrections mode looks like. So you can see above this dotted line, there are 5 colored squares. Those are the exact 5 questions that Timmy missed on his exam. Now, Get More Math is going to ask him to do 2 things. I'm going to ask him to go ahead and correct his mistake. So take the wrong answer and fix it. Once he does that, I'll give him a fresh new problem of the same type. Now I'm going to ask him to earn a point on that question. Show me that you understand the mistake you made by showing me you can get it right on the first try. So my students now actually have to remediate the mistakes they made on a test. Now, we talk about this idea of flush in Get More Math. I don't know how many of you can relate to this story, but I would, when I taught algebra, my students struggled with domain and range, big time. So that was always in chapter 3. So we would get through chapter 3. Almost all of my students would miss the questions on domain and range, but nobody cared because we were going to move on to chapter 4. And chapter 4 barely spoke of domain and range. And chapter 5 was on systems. We definitely weren't talking about domain and range. So that flush would happen. My students were like, oh, good. I don't have to think about that skill anymore. I made it past the test. I passed the test, but I don't need to worry about actually knowing that material. That doesn't work when I used Get More Math to build cumulative tests, and there's several reasons why. When I taught domain and range, of course it would be on the assessment, but if the students missed it, guess where it showed up? It showed up in their corrections. They had to continue to correct it. They had to continue grappling with that material. Well, let me tell you, Get More Math has so many little things built in to not allow for the flush. And here's a perfect example. If I have students that are struggling with material on an exam, not only do they get to just flush that thought out and move on and never see it, they're going to specifically see it in their corrections. We're going to ask them to find that error, fix the error, practice the problem. So they can't just assume that because the test is over, they get to move on and never see it again. They realize that they will in fact see it immediately and have to continue to persevere and work with that skill. Now, once those corrections are done, I would leave those up for a few days. And then I would tell my students that I wanted them to go ahead and request their follow-up. Let's take a look at what the follow-up looks like. My students would head to their menu, they'd request the test, and they would see here that they have an Exam 6 follow-up. And when they click on that follow-up exam, it looks just like the first exam, except what you'll notice is there's only 5 questions. And these are the 5 skills that Timmy missed originally. So now Timmy has a chance to say, hey, listen, let me show you that whatever mistake I made a few days ago, I actually know what I'm doing now. It's like a redemption quiz. And so my students, again, no more flush. You're going to have to practice. You're going to have to continue to find those errors. And then I'm going to re-quiz you on that material. And this is where I'll tell you, I loved that suddenly my assessments had a purpose. It wasn't just, well, you got a 70, let me put the grade in the grade book and move on. There was no just moving past an exam. The results of the exam informed their practice, which informed another assessment, which then, let's take a look at the reports. I could take a look and compare both the exam scores and the follow-up scores. So you can see here I have my entire class. Let's again take a look at Timmy. Timmy got a 15 out of 20 on the exam, but take a look at that right column. On the follow-up exam a few days later, on the 5 skills he missed, he got 3.5 correct, 3.5 points out of 5. That was huge for me. I didn't care whether he got them on the first day or the second day. All I wanted was my kids to progress. I wanted them to grow. And if using that assessment helped me identify his weaknesses to help him, that's exactly what I wanted as a teacher. So I loved this idea of an exam and then a follow-up. Now, let's take a look at this view analysis here at the top of the screen. Get More Math will give you an item analysis for any exam you give, or follow-up for that matter. You can see here on the left, we will give you a description of every skill you've included. The ×3 and the ×2, that shows whether you've included that skill multiple times on the test. And then over on the right side, you'll notice that we will order the number of students that missed a skill or the number of points that were missed on any given skill. I usually like to look at this last column. I would order by points missed, and then I would take a look at those top skills, the ones that seem to be missed a lot. Then I would go over on the left and I would select the top 5 or 6 skills. And over here, once you select them, Create Practice Set will become live. And now I have the ability to take the results of my assessment and create further practice for my students. So maybe I want to make that the next focus practice for my kiddos. Sometimes I did that. Often I did not. I didn't always need to because I knew that through the dotted line corrections, Get More Math was already pushing the mistakes to my students. So it's really up to you. There are certain instances when it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, but here's what I always did. Watch this little trick. So I would go ahead and select those 5 skills that were most missed on this exam. You can see here we're looking at test 5. And I would click the button that says Create Practice Set. So now I would have a practice set sitting in my work, and I would call it the most missed skills on exam 5. Now, whether I wanted to provide that as practice or not, it's totally up to me. But what I always did is I always included those 5 skills on the next exam. Because remember, my exams were always pulling back. Of course, it would include the new material, but I wanted it to include old material. And specifically, I wanted it to include the material that my students didn't do so well on before so that I could see, are they doing better? Do they know it now? Then I would go over to the mixed review and I gather some more mixed review skills to build them, which makes this cycle truly a cycle. The results of one exam are now going to inform everything that's happening moving forward. It's going to inform their practice. It's going to give them a chance to have another follow-up exam. You're going to be able to take those results and inform the next exam you create so that we truly are just creating this complete environment that is supporting cumulative practice. Our students can no longer learn a skill and then just get rid of it. Once and done doesn't happen in a Get More Math classroom like this. So I'll tell you, for me and my experience in my classroom, really using Get More Math as my major assessment tool was as powerful as that daily mixed review because it supported them. They worked together. The daily mixed review worked with that mixed review cumulative assessment. So I'm super excited about this. I want you guys to remember that, of course, can you take our exams and just build a weekly quiz? Absolutely. Can you take our tests and build just a chapter 1 exam? You can build a diagnostic exam. You can use our exam feature to build anything you want. But I don't want you to miss the power that lies in the possibility of continuing to give our kids cumulative exams. Don't forget about those corrections. Think about what that would do for your students if they knew that every time they took a test, they then really had to go back and grapple with those errors and fix them and continue to practice them. Knowing that there would be a moment, an opportunity to redeem themselves, to show you that they actually have learned from their mistakes. And again, remember, Get More Math's doing it all for you. You don't have to build those follow-ups. As soon as you save the grade on the original exam, it's built for you. Time saver. And then think about that analysis. Think about how you can compare how students did on one exam to the follow-up exam after that, in addition to an item analysis where it's clearly going to do all that work for you and show you which skills the majority of your students are struggling with. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out to any of us. The easiest way to do that is the email shown right here at support@getmoremath.com. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Pam Long here. I'm going to tackle the mixed review report. After you have used Get More Math for some time, it is important to examine the data collected to help drive your instruction. I will analyze certain metrics, provide targets, and suggest actions you can take to address any issues. Okay, let's take a look at our mixed review report. When you first log into your Get More Math account, you will be placed on the Classes page. Choose your class in the far left column and choose Mixed Review in the second column. You can collapse these two columns by choosing the arrows at the bottom. This will give us more screen real estate so we can really look at all the components of the Mixed Review report. The very first metric we want to examine is points distribution. Points distribution is given to us in the shape of a pie graph. The different pie pieces represent the number of points that have been earned by your student in both the mixed review and the practice sets. If you hover over the green pie piece, you will see the number of points all of your students have earned while working in mixed review. If you hover over the purple pie piece, you will see the number of points all of your students have earned while working in practice sets. If you add those together, that represents the total number of points your students have earned in your class. What are we looking for in terms of the pie chart? We would like to see the pie chart be weighed in favor of mixed review. That means we would like to see more green than purple. By having more green on the pie graph, your students are spending more time in mixed review, which is the cumulative, individualized environment. That's where skills are prioritized for each one of your students, so they can spiral through them and build their long-term retention. If half of their points are earned in mixed review and half in the practice sets, that is still considered good. But when we start seeing more purple than green in our pie chart, that needs work. Remember, practice sets are to be quick, focused practice on new material. They are going to see gains while they are working in the mixed review environment. The next metric I want to look at is rotation time. This metric is so important. Rotation time reports the median number of days it has taken your students to correctly cycle through all of the skills in mixed review. Looking at my class, you can see that my rotation time is 7.5 days. To the left of this metric, you can see I have 52 active skills. That means my students have correctly cycled through all 52 active skills within a median number of 7.5 days. So, my students have correctly cycled through all 52 skills within about a week. That is amazing, which means they're moving from short-term memory into long-term memory on those skills. What targets are acceptable for rotation time? If your rotation time falls between 1 and 30 days, that is great. That means within a month, your students are cycling through all the skills in their mixed review. If it's between 31 and 45 days, that's good. It means they're doing pretty well, but we'd like that number to be lower if possible. If it's taking your students 45 or more days to cycle through all of the skills in mixed review correctly, that's too much time. If they haven't seen a skill in well over a month and a half, it is highly unlikely they're going to retain that information and build their knowledge on those skills. Striving for a lower rotation time is one of the keys to successfully building your students' long-term retention. Points distribution and rotation time are two of the most important metrics to analyze for your class. If you're looking at these and you realize they're not within the acceptable target ranges, then they need to be addressed. Hold tight. We're going to look at actions that you can take to improve these metrics. But before that, let's dig into more data based on the skills in your students' mixed review. Underneath the top level metrics, we provide data for each skill in your students' mixed review. I want to draw your attention to those three little bars in the upper right. That is your column visibility tool. Click there to expose more columns in the report. The first column I want to talk to you about is proficient students. This metric to me is the most important because it signifies growth. Proficiency in Get More Math means that your students are getting a skill right over time, not just today. Proficiency is defined as the percentage of students who have achieved green, silver, or gold. The longer the skill has been active, the greater this percentage should be. So, if a skill has 0% proficiency, you can see to the right your students are either red or yellow, and nobody has a green, silver, or gold rating. No one has shown tremendous growth on this skill. Remember, all skills start as red. They can change to yellow in one day. But for yellow skills to move to green and then silver and gold, students must correctly answer that skill over time. If the skill is older and your students are continually stuck in the red and yellow ratings, they are not making growth on that skill. In contrast, I can see I have a skill with 100% proficiency. That means all of my students are green, silver, or gold. They have made growth on those skills over time, and that's what I want to see. Keep an eye on proficiency. If you're looking at your proficient students column and there's a lot of zeros, that's concerning. If it's a new skill, then 0 proficiency is okay, since they haven't had time to move along the color rating. But if it's an older skill, then your students are not making progress and this needs to be addressed. Accuracy represents the percentage of time that students answer correctly on their first attempt. Here it is reported by skill. A high accuracy on a skill indicates they're getting it right on their first attempt. When compared to proficiency, if accuracy is high and proficiency is low, then two things are possible. 1, the skill is new and the students are doing well. They just haven't had enough time to practice to move that skill up the color levels. Or 2, the skill is old. The students are getting it right when exposed to it, but they are not seeing it enough and cycling through to move that skill to a proficiency level. So maybe you're saying to yourself, great information, Pam, but what can I do if my metrics are outside the acceptable ranges? There are 2 main actions we recommend. 1, spend more time in mixed review, and 2, deactivate some skills. Let me show you how to accomplish these. Maybe your students are spending sufficient time in mixed review, but your metrics are still off. This could indicate that you have too many skills in mixed review. Let me show you how you can deactivate skills. Order by proficient students. If you've got skills that your students are 100% proficient in and their accuracy is high, no one's red, no one's yellow, everyone's green, silver, or gold, feel free to turn off some of those skills. Less skills means students have a higher chance of cycling through what is left. Remember, you could always reactivate those skills, especially if they are a prerequisite skill for the next course or they're a testable item. Just because students have reached mastery doesn't mean they're going to not forget it. Pull those skills back up, reactivate them so that students can retain that mastery as you move forward. Think about oversaturated skills or building block skills. Maybe you taught a lesson on mean. Order by date added or by description, and you can see I have a lot of skills that address the mean. Students do not need that many skills. Consider turning a few of them off. Look at skills that build. For example, when students are first learning about fractions, teachers will begin with identifying fractions, decomposing fractions, evaluating fractions, simplifying, adding fractions with like denominators, least common multiple, adding fractions with unlike denominators, and finally comparing fractions with unlike denominators. If students can answer questions about adding and comparing fractions with unlike denominators, a higher skill, do they really need the basic skills taught to reach that level? Consider turning off some of the building block of skills, like identifying, decomposing, and evaluating. Lastly, let's look at condensed skills. In Get More Math, we have skills called condensed skills, and they're identified by a hexagon with a white outline, and we'll say condensed in the description. If you click on one example, you are going to see two skill codes. The first is the condensed skill code. If you cycle through examples, the second skill code is going to change to represent the individual skills that make up that condensed skill. So maybe you've given your students those individual skills and they've done really well. You can turn off the individual skills and replace it with that condensed skill. So you're eliminating skills, giving the students less to cycle through. What can you do now? Increase time in mixed review. More prioritized practice in that mixed review environment is going to lead to more retention for your students and in turn make your metrics better. If you are spending considerable time in mixed review and you're still not seeing really great metrics, maybe you have too many skills in your mixed review. Fewer skills to practice means that your students have more time to cycle through those skills and build more retention of what's remaining. So, how can you increase your time in mixed review? Why? Because we want students to have effective practice to earn points and move through the colors. Just because you go to the gym doesn't mean you're going to get strong. You have to put the time in and lift those weights. Same thing with mixed review. Just because students get to mixed review doesn't mean their long-term retention is good. They need to actually spend time there earning points and producing color changes. How can you do that? Well, the first thing is to model practice sets. I know when I was in the classroom and I would teach a lesson and say, okay, go ahead and log into Get More Math and begin working. Within the first 5, 10, and even 15 minutes, my students were asking so many questions about wording and how to put the answer in. So I learned the hard way. If I would just have spent a few minutes projecting a problem and modeling it for my students, showing them how it's being asked and showing them how it should be answered, much of the time spent asking questions would have been eliminated, allowing my students more quality time to work in mixed review. In terms of practice sets, keep them small. They're supposed to be short, focused practice on new material. If I'm requiring my students to earn 20 points on the practice set before they can start mixed review, most of them would never reach 20 or they would and quit. Make them small so that students can earn these points, showing you they understand the new material and allowing them sufficient time in mixed review. Be sure to set a daily goal and switch the students to mixed review. When you set today's goal, make sure it includes points to be earned in mixed review. For example, if your practice set goal was 6, make your daily goal 12. Therefore, students need to get 6 points in the practice set and 6 more in mixed review. If necessary, push those students into mixed review using the button Switch to Mixed Review to get them there. It's okay if they didn't finish the practice set. Those skills are in their mixed review, and if they didn't get enough practice in the practice set, the program knows it and will give them more practice in mixed review on them. Another thing is to have a targeted mixed review day. Tell your students we're working in mixed review all day today so that you can move some of those color ratings, get rid of your penalties, get rid of unfixed errors, and get more practice with all of the skills in mixed review.
Get More Math does love Texas. In fact, we have 4 folders in our Texas collection, the first of which is Diagnostic, to help determine where gaps may exist. The Fill the Gaps collection will help to identify lower grade level skills to address gaps. We have a STAAR Practice folder and our Standards folder, in which our grade level TEKS alignment is showcased. In our Texas Diagnostic folder, you'll find that there are 60 skills per grade level in each diagnostic. Those skills are arranged by reporting category and then by readiness and supporting TEKS within each of those reporting categories. In the diagnostic, each reporting category is weighted according to the STAAR blueprint. Most skills are multiple choice, and our diagnostic can be used with the exam feature to diagnose any gaps that your students may have. From the Texas Collection, just beneath all skills, you can expand the Texas folder to view the 4 collections. Diagnostic is first, and if we choose Diagnostic, we are able to see each of the grade level diagnostics. I would suggest using the 6th grade diagnostic for incoming 7th graders. When I click on the grade 6 diagnostic, you'll see it's organized by reporting categories. Within each reporting category, it's organized by readiness and supporting TEKS. And if I click on the readiness folder, I can view the skills chosen for reporting category 1. As always, you're able to view samples of problems, and then you may use that blue plus sign to create an exam. When creating the exam, if you include all the skills in the diagnostic folder, you'll match the blueprint of STAAR. You may choose to include only some of the skills if you prefer. After a student completes the exam, you may review the student's scores and the analysis of the diagnostic exam. After administering the exam, you can determine where those gaps may exist and address those skills lacking with mixed review, remediation, or targeted practice. You may also use the Fill the Gaps folder, designed to identify the Get More Math level skills that scaffold a TEK from previous grade levels. Let's take a look at the Fill the Gaps folder. If I were working with 6th graders, I would use that Fill the Gaps folder to identify those skills from previous grade levels that scaffold to develop that particular TEK. When I open the 6th grade folder, I see each of the TEKs, and when I see 6th grade, I'm able to see that some of those TEKs are combined, like 6.2 C and D that I have chosen, the comparison of rational numbers. I see those grade levels that scaffold and the skills within each of those grade levels to support the development and fill the gaps. Get More Math also has a STAAR Practice folder. The STAAR Practice folder has grade level practice for each accountability tested grade. Those skills are arranged by reporting categories and by readiness and supporting TEKS within each category. The skills included are only application level problems, and the number of skills are not weighted by the STAAR blueprint. In the folder, when we choose STAAR Practice, you can use the grade levels for which there is a STAAR accountability exam. For instance, you'll notice there is not a geometry STAAR practice. If you look in our Standards folder, it's organized by TEKS, so you're going to see all of the grade level alignments. For each TEK, you're going to see knowledge type problems all the way to application level skills. You have access to the building block level skills and skills that meet the level of rigor of STAAR, all in the TEKS folder. We're proud of our Texas grade level alignments. When you click on Texas and then click on Standards, After choosing standards, you'll see those grade level alignments. And once you choose a particular grade, for instance, I've chosen the 6th grade, you'll see it's organized by TEKS. I can choose a particular TEK. I can see the skills that align with that TEK. I could choose any one of those skills to include in a practice set or an exam. I can see samples of those skills, and I can cycle through several of the samples. I'm also able to view what Get More Math expects the answer to be. When you look at our Texas folder, you'll know Get More Math loves Texas. With the TEKS alignment in each folder, you'll find all the skills you need.
Hi, I'm Shelley Pelton, Texas Account Manager for Get More Math. I live in Huntington, Texas, which is nestled deep in the East Texas piney woods. Like everyone else that you've heard from today, I consider myself first and foremost to be an educator. I've taught 25 years in middle schools around Texas and then served several years after that as an instructional coach for Lufkin Middle School. I'm just one of 3 people that make up our terrific Texas team. Say that 3 times real fast. You've already heard from Jennifer and Robin, and you've probably already met one of them in person. Together, we have a combined 80+ years of experience. You can call upon us at any time. We'll all 3 go the extra mile to do what it takes to help you. Now, I know that you've heard a lot of good things today. You're already doing an amazing job, and I hope you can take something of what you've heard today and make it even better and have a successful year next year. As we conclude, I want to thank you for your valuable time invested in watching what we had to share with you. If there's other teachers on your campus that are not using Get More Math, but you think would benefit, or they have already expressed interest that maybe they would like to, please share our sign up, our registration link with them. I think you'll see it at the bottom of the screen. Pass that along to them. Continue to reach out with any questions you may have or comments. We absolutely love hearing your feedback, and we really do value it, and we listen to it. In parting, I know that education this next year, we don't know what direction it's going to take. It's taken such a rapid turn. It caught us all unaware. School policies, instructional practices, they're going to evolve as the year goes by. You know, the African proverb, you've all heard it, it takes a village to raise a child. It's ringing true now more than it ever has. And remember that we're a company of educators. We've been in the trenches with you, and we're going to stand right along beside you. All of our Get More Math teachers, we're here for you when you need us. And just take a moment, smile, laugh, and life will be wonderful. Have a blessed rest of your day.